Shalom, shalom, shalom. I'm back. I'm back with I call this the greatest addendum to the bride price and the real trial of the bride video. There were some corrections that Abba made with me. He opened my eyes to yesterday, and I was just blown away. Okay, I wasn't even looking for it. You know how it goes. I'm not looking for it. I'm just like dee 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 dee, and he tells me, but some spirit, go look up some more information about Hiram. Like, go look up some more about Tyre. Study Tyre. Study the city of Tyre, Tzor, the city of Tzor. Sorry. Go study a little bit more, and just investigate the history of Tzor and of Hiram, and go back and look at the scriptures, because you can't always rely on what man tells you, because the scriptures will tell you through the Ruach HaKodesh, obviously through the help of the Ruach HaKodesh. So let us pray. I get this so exciting. Okay, Abba Yah, we just thank you for this day that you've given us. And I pray that this teaching, correction and teaching will be most edifying to your people, as well as it has been to me. I pray that always, as always, to go study, to show yourself. I always pray that they go show themselves, to study themselves approved, to test these things out for themselves in your word. Okay, for your word is truth, and we need to hold fast to that. Everybody will have their own opinions, but by your spirit, you reveal the mysteries of your kingdom and also the things that have happened in the past. And for that, Abba, we say Toda Yah. Thank you so much. I pray that this teaching will be a blessing to every listener who listens from beginning to end, and that will be edifying, and that you give for clarity and correction, as you have done with me, as you have corrected me and gave me more clarity, so that the teaching can be more understandable and more thorough. We just thank you so much, Abba, for what you're doing. And it's in Yehoshua's name we pray. B'Shem Yehoshua HaMashiach HaNazari. Amen. Okay, I'm a little bit tired because I was up late trying to put all this together, even though I started like in the evening, late afternoon, evening. Anyway, it wasn't something I was anticipating, but I just, I had this strong urge in my spirit, like, look up more information about Hiram. And I already did a teaching on the real tribe of the bride about Hiram and how Hiram worked with King Shlomo. But there's a deeper family connection here that Abba wanted to reveal to me, that really spans thousands of years. And I didn't see it the first time. I know I had these questions in the back of my mind, like, why would he want to work so closely with King Shlomo and King Dawid? And I think in the real tribe of the bride, I think I mentioned because of the text, the way I was reading it, or the way it was written. I think it was from the Bible version. Yes, but the Bible version BSB, the way they wrote it made it sound like that his mother, being a widow, was of the tribe of Naphtali. But when you actually break it down to Hebrew, you know how that goes, y'all. When you actually break it down to Hebrew, it doesn't say that. It's saying that he's of the tribe of Naphtali, but that his mom's a widow. Okay, so that's why the Ibrit, the Hebrew, is so critically important to go back and look at it, because sometimes the way they translate it, just switching a word around, okay, can change the whole meaning of what an English reader is reading, and it'll change the whole understanding of what you're looking at. And it's not saying that his mother of the tribe of Naphtali. It says he is of the tribe of Naphtali, okay? And his father is a man of Tzor, meaning his father was, born and raised there, And I'm going to show that Tzor is one of the dwelling places of Yaakov. It's one of the dwelling places of Israel. And I'm going to link a couple of YouTube videos that does elaborate on this. That was very helpful for me to examine what I had written down previously, and to really get more understanding in this relationship between King Shlomo and Hiram. Is Hiram. That's what it means in that's the way it's pronounced in Hebrew. Hiram, and it means like whiteness, pure, whiteness, like white linen. It actually comes from the word white linen. Okay. Hiram's name actually comes from the Hebrew word meaning white linen, which is very interesting because we see linen, you know, um, the garments mentioned in Psalm 45. And he took me full circle from Hiram back to Psalm 45. And it just, everything just made way more sense because, there's certain things I still scratch in my head. Like, I know the king's daughter is the princess, right? But which king's daughter is he referring to, And Yah has answered all that in this study that he had me do. So let's dig onto it, okay? All right. I have the proof that King Hiram of Tyre, of Tzor, okay, Tzor means rock. It actually means like a rock that you sharpen. You press down hard and you sharpen. It makes me think of a flint arrowhead, like a Native American arrowhead. Literally, when I look at the Hebrew word for Tzor, it made me think of a Native American arrowhead. And you're going to find out when we talk about the Israelite diaspora, it actually is connected to Native Americans. Okay, this is really wild. Okay, I mean, this is Abba has. Whew, boy, I was like, I got shaken. Okay. Now I want to lay the foundation. That proof that King Hiram of Tyre of Tzor is a man of the tribe of Naphtali. And really, we got to think about it. You'll see in some historical context, they'll say that Tzor, that Tyre was a Phoenician town. Phoenician is just another name for Canaanite, okay? C word Canaanites, okay? It was a Canaanite town. And that's a kitty cat. As you know, as most of Israel, they conquered Canaanite cities and took over Canaanite cities. This is no different, okay? The tribe of Naphtali, men of the tribe of Naphtali took over Tzor. It was a Canaanite, a Phoenician town, and there probably was still Canaanites there, but they served the king, which it was of Israel, okay? Which it was of the tribe of Naphtali, of this city, of this coastal seaport city, all right? This is how it happened, okay? Because the northern boundaries of Naphtali, some people will say, well, Tyre was in the land region of Asher. Not necessarily. The northern border, if you look at the scriptures, the northern border of Naphtali didn't really have a northern border. So they were allowed to go northward as far as they could, okay? So they didn't stop necessarily conquering cities or towns or villages over the years. It's just that Tzor was one of those conquered areas that Naphtali conquered, and they were permitted to do so because their boundaries up north there was no set boundary for them in that region. Okay, you just go back and look at the boundaries given. I think it's in the book of in the Torah. Just go back and look in the Torah. I'm trying to remember if it was like the book of Numbers or Deuteronomy, but it mentions the borders that were given to Naphtali, and you'll see the northern border, there wasn't any really set border, so they could just keep going north. And that's what this city of Tzor is a conquered Phoenician city that was conquered by the men of the tribe of Naphtali. And in this case, I know they're going to say other things, but I'm going to show you this man actually was a worshiper of the Most High Yehovah, okay, contrary to what you might read in some historical whatever. Okay, just because one person's father was, a certain way doesn't mean that the son's going to be the same way, right? Anyway, just to put that in context, I'm going to focus on what the scripture says. I'm not going to focus on what everybody else says because people have their own, whatever. Okay, so clearly from the text that I read in the First Kings and Second Chronicles, there are two Hirams. There are two Hirams, okay, of Tyre mentioned in First Kings and Second Chronicles. So we'll look at the first Hiram, which is King Hiram, King Hiram, king of Tyre, Tzor. You see him in First Kings chapter 5, First Kings chapter 7. I'm going to highlight on verse 13 through 14, 40, 45, and 46. First Kings chapter 9, verse 11 through 14. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 3, and also 11 through 13. And the other Hiram is called Hiram Abi. Okay, Hiram Abi, that was his name. This was sent. This man was sent by the king of Hiram. Okay, by Hiram. And he was a skilled man of understanding to help build the temple. Okay, King Solomon's temple, seen in Second Chronicles chapter 2, verse 14, 13 through 14. Now I'm going to make a distinction. Now people might say, well, how do you know who's who? Didn't you say that that King Hiram was of his mother was of the tribe of Naphtali in the other video? Yes, like I said, the Hebrew actually states that he was of the tribe of Naphtali and that his mother was a widow. It's just the way they wrote it in English in the other Bible version that distorted what it was actually saying in the Hebrew, unfortunately. Okay, so I'm making that correction there. Also, this particular Hiram Abi, his mother, this particular man's mother was of the tribe of Dan. Okay, she was of the daughters of Dan. His father was a man of Tyre, of Tzor, which we can either assume that he's probably another man of Naphtali. All right. But King Hiram sent him to Sholomo. I'm going to show you that the king that in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, that was King Hiram being fetched by King Solomon, okay? Because King Hiram sent to Sholomo Hiram Abi, but Hiram Abi was skilled in everything, okay? He was skilled in silver, gold, brass, wood, stone, linen, fine linen, crimson, purple, blue, scarlet, yarn. He was skilled in all those things, this Hiram Abi. But the Hiram, the king, he was skilled in brass, okay? And he's the one who made these two pillars that we call Boaz and Yakin. And that's going to be very significant when we go to Psalms 45. You will see it's amazing how the Ruach HaKodesh really just helped me to connect things. Okay, so let's start with King Hiram. I got A, B, C. I went all the way to G. Okay. So here's some pointers about him, and then we're going to read the scriptures verses. Okay. A, okay, of King Hiram. Let's just say number one. I'll say number one for the sake of it. This is regarding King Hiram, the king of Tyre, the king of Tzor. Okay. In Hebrew is Tzor. The more modern term is Tyre, but it's Tzor. Tzor. Number one, in 1 Kings chapter 7, 13 through 14, Shlomo sends for Hiram and takes him out of Tzor to work on brass only. Number two, he actively blesses King Hiram, of Tzor. Yes, King Hiram of Tzor. He actively blesses Yehovah, Elohim of Israel, in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 7, and 2 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. I will show you that. C, or number three in this case, I put them in letters. Number three, King Shlomo and King Hiram made a covenant, a brotherly covenant with one another. You see that in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 12. Now, note that King Shlomo wouldn't make a covenant with a pagan foreign man or a pagan foreign king. No, just like David made a covenant with Jonathan, King Saul's son, King Shlomo is making a covenant with someone else who is actually of Israel. All right. And I'm going to show you that this man was actually of Israel, as I said, of the tribe of Naphtali. Let's see, that was 3. 4, King Hiram is given 20 cities in the land of Galilee belonging to the tribe of Naphtali. Now, King Shlomo wouldn't give tribal land inheritance to a foreign king, right? You think he's going to take a king who is a pagan, a heathen of the nations, and say, oh, here, pagan king, I'm going to give you 20 cities that belongs to Israel. No, he would not do that. Okay. So when King Shlomo was giving these 20 cities, which we see in 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 11 and 12, when he gave King Hiram these 20 cities in the land of Naphtali, in the land of Galilee. This is because this was a part of the tribe that he belonged to. Okay, I hear Kitty. So no, King Shlomo wouldn't give tribal land inheritance to a foreign king, but rather to someone of that particular tribe. Okay, and we know that the land of Galilee belongs to the tribe of Naphtali. I'm getting distracted by this cat. Hold on. Oh, okay. Come on. Okay. All right. So anyway, we know that he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't give land to a foreign king. And actually, Yah opened my eyes to realize that this was a bride price. He had, for some reason, King Shlomo had probably conquered these 20 cities. He knew Hiram was of the tribe of Naphtali, and he conquered 20 cities, right? Let's say all that, but you can infer because they had a brotherly covenant with each other, okay? That covenant was probably like, we're brothers forever. Your daughters will marry my sons, and your sons will marry my daughters, okay? That's probably what the covenant was between King Hiram and King Shlomo. Okay, so understand this is a very strong connection that they had. And so at the end of, making all these, he still was building for 20 years. He helped King Shlomo build. That's from the cat. Sorry, the video is doing this. It's from the cat doing that on the table. 20 years of building all that service that King Hiram provided to King Shlomo, and probably as a bride price, he conquered probably those 20 cities and gave them to King Hiram in exchange for probably King Hiram's daughter. Okay, which leads us back to Psalm 45 when it says the king's daughter. Perhaps we can figure out which king he's referring to. Okay, in reference, it's amazing. Okay, I'm just blown away what Abba led me to. So we see, I said this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so point number 5. King Hiram of Tzor calls King Shlomo my brother. Okay, and we see that in 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 13. Okay, number 6, he is from the tribe of Naphtali. His mother's a widow, and his father is from Tzor, meaning that's just a town. It's one of the dwellings of Jacob. And I'll show you in Psalms 87 that Tyre was one of the dwellings of Jacob. Okay, I will show you that. One of the places where the children of Israel dwelt. Okay, 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14. And lastly, number 7, he has a Hebrew name. Hiram is a Hebrew name for whiteness or white linen. Okay, he has a Hebrew name. Okay, that's not an Assyrian name. It's a Hebrew name. So let's keep that in mind. I mentioned what the meanings of Hiram and Tzor are. And note that Tzor in Amos chapter 1, verse 9 is punished for not remembering the brotherly covenant between King Shlomo and King Hiram. Okay, in Amos chapter 1, verse 9. Now, and I'm going to go ahead and also read this too. In Psalms chapter 87, 1 through 7, it mentions that the dwellings of Yaakov include Rehab, Babylon, Philistia, Tzor, which is Tyre, and Ethiopia, okay, which is what we call modern day Africa, because Ethiopia, all of Africa at that time was really called Ethiopia. All right, and we know that the sons of Jacob dwelt in these places. They dwelt in Rehab. They dwelt in Babylon. They dwelt in Philistia. They dwelt in Tzor, Tyre. They dwelt in Ethiopia. So Tzor was no other than another dwelling place of the children of Israel, okay? And this particular city, which is a coastal seaport city, was pretty much run by men of the tribe of Naphtali, King Hiram, and probably other family members as well. Some information I got from a website, The Collector's History of Ancient Classical City of Tyre. I paraphrased some things and I added some information to just summarize for myself this matter. Is that the Canaanite Phoenician city of Tyre Tzor was most likely conquered by the men of the tribes of Naphtali after the city was freed from the Egyptian hegemony, and became an independent city-state around 1150 BCE. King Hiram ruled the city-state of Tzor, Tyre, from 980 to 947 BCE. Okay. The legendary land of Ophir traded with Israel through Tzor. Okay. So it was like Tzor was like an outport, like an extension of Israel because it was run by men of Israel, namely of Naphtali. You'll see that in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 11. Tyre Tzor was allowed to continue to trade during the Assyrian Empire. However, successive Assyrian kings eroded Tzor's independence and it lost control of its possession. So pretty much Assyrian Empire says Tzor is ours. It's not yours anymore, Israel. It's not yours anymore, Northern Kingdom of Israel. It's not yours anymore, Naphtali. And so where do you think, obviously, the kingly lineage, this Naphtali kingly lineage, okay, where the kings, the Naphtali kings of Tzor, where do you think they went to? Where do you think they went to after the Syrian Empire said, it's ours? The city of Tzor is ours. They probably took a boat, took ships, and went to Ophir. That's all they knew. They knew that's what they spent decades getting gold from Ophir. And that is most likely what was later called, I'm sorry, I'm turning on my notes, was later called Arzareth, Arzareth, okay, in 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 45. So the question I pose there is, could Arzareth of 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 45 be the legendary land of Ophir, which bears the 10 Commandments in Paleo-Hebrew in New Mexico, dating back to 2,500 to 3,000 years. And that's around the time that the men of Tzor were doing a lot of trading of getting gold and algum wood from Ophir. Okay. This is probably another name for Ophir because they didn't really know where Ophir is at. Obviously, there's a lot of teaching out there that says that that Ophir is actually the Philippines. I just think that was Ophir. If there's any relationship with the Philippines in terms of gold, it was a satellite island nation. But I think the main location of Ophir was the Americas, because we think about El Dorado, the city of gold. Remember all these Spanish legends that they're like, there's gold over there. Go find it. Okay. We know about the gold rush in California, the gold in Georgia and other places in the Appalachian areas, and the gold in South America. This continent of all the Americas was a big gold rush. I mean, gold, silver, precious stones. There's still a lot of places that in the mountains regions that have, like in Idaho, that have a lot of still precious stones. So, I mean, and we know we have archaeological artifacts of Hebrews being here. Like I just mentioned, the 10 Commandments written in Paleo-Hebrew that is on a rock in New Mexico. They found Canaanite copper in Michigan. Okay. There was other Hebrew artifacts that were found around the Chicago area. We know that the Hebrews were here. So I'm proposing in this that the true Ophir, the mainland Ophir, is the Americas, but the Philippines was probably a satellite island because they took a lot of ships. Okay, they knew how to navigate. Hiram's fleet knew how to navigate the seas. Something I want to point out here in that is that according to, and the reason why I'm saying that this is most likely Ophir, because if you look at, thank you, Abba, 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 22. 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 22. And I'm going to go through all these verses probably, maybe in another video. I just don't want it just to be like a 40-hour video. Usually I like to read through the scriptures so you can see it. but I'm mentioning it right now in this video because it's a lot of information, and I'm probably going to do a appendix type version. So I'm reading through the scriptures so that you'll see it. But 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 22, and it reads here, okay. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram once in 3 years. So every 3 years, essentially, came the navy of Tarshish bringing gold, silver, ivory. It says apes and peacocks. Actually, the Septuagint would call the apes and peacock stones. They call them gemstones and hewn stones. I don't know why the Septuagint doesn't say apes and peacocks. It says stones, like gemstones and hewn stones, like, stones that were cut out. But that's what it says in this verse in the KJV. Okay. So they went out every 3 years. That means to get this gold, it was far away. Okay. It took 3 years, every 3 years. That means it took them a half a year to get there, get the stuff loaded on these ships, and it took another half a year to get back. So that's why it went out every 3 years. They went out every 3 years with the ships of Tarshish. Hiram's Navy fleet went out. And the only thing I could say that Ophir had to been Arzareth, mentioned in 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 45. Okay, now you'll find that in the KJV 1611 books, because 2nd Ezra was actually in the KJV Bible for a long time, for over almost 300 years, and then they took it out, okay, for whatever reason, right? But keep this in mind here, that according to 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 45, and I have it in my scriptures here, Arzareth is the land that the Assyrians deported the 10 tribes of Israel of the northern kingdom to, which is a year and a half journey beyond the river to reach. It took 18 months essentially to get to this land called Arzareth. Okay, Arzareth in Hebrew means other land, far from habitation of man. So I put here, think of El Dorado, the city of gold. If you look at Magellan's, what's it called? I think it's this name. I think that's his name. Magellan's, journey across the world. Of course, he didn't make it across. He actually got killed, I think, in the Philippines. But it took him a while to get back to, where he came from. I think, I think it maybe was 2 years. I think it took him a while. Okay, I had to go back and look at that history information there. But it took a year and a half to get to Arzareth, which I'm proposing that this is the land of Ophir, the Americas, because if you go from the port where the Euphrates River is at, and you take a journey via ships, you have to do pit stops and things like that, and you have people with you that you have to make sure that they're fed, and you have to be cognitive of the weather. It would take about a year and a half to get to the Americas from that location. Okay, we know by historical records that to get to the Philippines, if the Philippines is really the true land of Ophir, of gold and all that stuff that they mentioned, it would have said less time, because we know that on ships, it took from the port by the Euphrates River to the Philippines, it takes 3 months to get there. 3 months to get there, and then 3 months back. And so I do believe that this is one of their satellite Ophirs, but I don't think it was like the main Ophir land. You got you got UK, right? You got Great Britain. You have names Cambridge and things like that. But if you come to the Americas, you come to North America, you got Cambridge, Street. You got New England, the northeast part of the United States is called New England. Okay, they name cities and towns after other cities and towns in Great Britain. And I don't see that as anything different that Israel would have done themselves or the Egyptians. There's evidence that the Egyptians colonized the Americas as well, and they named certain Egyptian names. They have found Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon. I don't care if they say no. They're lying to you if they say they didn't. Okay. There were Egyptian artifacts. Egyptians were here as well. Okay. Even other Native American tribes know these things. Okay, because it was passed down through the generations. Um, so just like when you move from a different country, you're gonna come to a new land and you're gonna name it after certain places that you're familiar with, right? All right. So they did no different, you know, then as we do now. Okay. Um, so this has to be that place of Ophir that took 3 years to go, 1.5 years to go there, and 1.5 years to come back. And so one would say, well, it would take time to mine gold. Cain, it does take time to mine gold. So they probably, some of the men of Israel, okay, some of the men of Tzor and of Tarshish probably had some work colonies here in the Americas. Of course, they're probably going to bring some women over, that stuff like that, that stayed here permanently to mine the gold. And so when ships came every 1.5 years, every 18 months, they will already have everything ready to load onto the ships. And those other men of Tzor will take those goods back to Tzor, back to Israel, to building the temple and Solomon's palaces. Okay. So that's how it probably worked out. Some of the men stayed in Ophir to mine the gold and the silver and things like that. And then when the ships came, put them on the ships, sent them back over to Israel. All right. And they would do that every 18 months. They would expect, so it took a 3-year journey to go to Ophir, which we call from 2nd Ezra chapter 13, verse 45, Arzareth, and to come back to Israel. Okay, to go to Ophir and then come back, that would take 3 years. All right, 1.5 years to get there, 1.5 years to go back. All right. So with all this information, we can conclude that the city of Tyre of Tzor was being ruled by the tribe of Naphtali, aka King Hiram. So essentially, when we look at Psalm chapter 45, verse 12, when it talks about the king's daughter, the daughter of Tzor comes with a gift. Okay. Remember, I read that the daughter of Tzor is referring to a relative of the bride, Psalm 45, verse 12. The daughter of Tzor is essentially a daughter of Naphtali from the city of Tzor. All right. And according to Psalms 87, verse 4, Tzor is one of the dwellings of Yaakov. All right. I want to highlight something that one last thing here. All right. So I got in my notes. Check this out. When Hiram built these brass, bronze, copper pillars, essentially, when he forged them, when do we see them in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 21 and 22, and 2 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 17, I want you to notice something here. One pillar that was forged by Hiram in the porch of the temple was named Yakin, and the other one was named Boaz. Yakin means he will establish, and Boaz means strength, remember? Note that each of these pillars had a lily work on top, okay? Works of lilies on top. And you look at the beginning of Psalm chapter 45, it talks about Shoshanim, which means lilies or trumpets. Okay, there's a connection there. On the right pillar is Yakin. And on the left is Boaz, which means together would mean he will establish strength. And I would download in my spirit that Yakin is representing the queen that is mentioned in Psalm 45, verse 9. Okay, remember I read that, which reads, I'm getting to it. Verse 9, king's daughters were among your honorable women. Upon your right hand, okay, upon the right hand of the king, so this is the right pillar, did stand the queen in gold of Ophir. Isn't that amazing? Meditate on that. Just meditate on that. Upon your right hand did stand the queen in gold of Ophir. Yakin. Yakin. The queen stands as the right pillar, and on the left pillar, strength, is the king. We see that reflected in Psalm 45. Man, oh man. This was a lot. Okay. I'm gonna do an appendix video of this great addendum. The greatest addendum. Going through and reading through the scriptures. Okay. It might take me a little bit longer to do that one. I just did not want this to take a 2-hour thing. So if somebody was downloading this, okay, let me quickly show you the Hebrew for that verse in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14, as it's 14a. So it's the first part of 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14. Let me show you what it says in the Hebrew versus how they translated it. You see that? Ben Isha al Mana Hu Mimate Naphtali Wea Bil Ish Zori. That means son of woman, widow. He from the tribe Naphtali, and his father, man of Tzor. You see, if it was referring to the widow as being of Naphtali, it would have said he, widow, something like that, son of widow, something like son of widow from the tribe of Naphtali, okay? But it's letting you know that it's referring to he, King Hiram, who was fetched. Remember, he was fetched out of Tzor to do this brass work, and the brass work only, from the tribe of Naphtali, his father, man of Tzor. All right? So the way they translate it in English made it confusing in some of the Bible versions. I think the King James did a pretty good job when they said the widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali. Okay. I think they did a better translation than the other Bible version. The more modern Bible versions that make it look like the widow was of the tribe of Naphtali when it's really referring to the son as being of the tribe of Naphtali. Obviously, that means this man of Tzor is of the tribe of Naphtali. Okay. As I said, I'll do a video with more reading of the actual scripture verses so that you can digest it more thoroughly. But I did mention pretty much all the verses that pertain to these things. But for the sake of those who, because there are those who probably won't take the time to actually go back and read these verses, I'm going to do a video where I'm reading those verses to show you those correlations. So that video might be a little bit longer than this one, but it's just so I'm just trying to summarize so much information that Abba gave me. Okay. Yesterday and last night. It was a lot. So I hope that was helpful. Like I said, this is in connection to the bride price video. And will the real tribe of the bride please stand up? Okay. So with that, I say shalom, shalom, and shalom.